That afternoon, the sun was blazing. Its glare bounced off the faded hood of an old pickup, making the air in the Walmart parking lot on the outskirts of Phoenix even more stifling and unbearable. Arthur Jennings, 82 years old, silver-haired, sun-weathered face, lean but steady, was slowly steering his old truck into a handicapped parking spot. His truck didn't have air conditioning, so every trip to the store was a battle against the heat. But today, he needed his heart medication. He couldn't wait any longer. Arthur had served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1971. He was a Huey door gunner, and a crash had left him with spinal injuries. After coming home, he went through rehab, learned to walk again for a while, but eventually lost full use of his legs. These days, the wheelchair was an extension of his body, just as his rifle once was in the jungle. His wife, Helen, had cared for him for 50 years, until she passed away last spring. Since then, Arthur had lived alone. He did his own grocery shopping, cooked simple meals, and still woke up every morning to make his bed like he was back in the barracks. When he parked, Arthur opened the door and reached for the folded wheelchair mounted on the back rack of his pickup. Every motion was slow but practiced. He'd done this routine 1,000 times. He gently placed the wheelchair on the ground, checked the brakes, then turned back to grab his wallet and a small paper bag with a handwritten shopping list. But in the few seconds he had his back turned, 3 teenagers stepped out of a black sedan parked nearby. They were laughing loudly, pushing and shoving each other. One of them, a tall boy with bleached hair, glanced at Arthur and smirked. He whispered something to the others, and all 3 chuckled. Then, without hesitation, the tall one casually walked over and began rolling the wheelchair across the lot. He didn't rush. He wasn't trying to steal it, just move it, just for fun. He pushed the chair behind a large Ford F-150 with a covered bed, completely out of sight. Then they walked back to their car and leaned against it, scrolling through their phones as if nothing had happened. Arthur turned around and froze. The wheelchair was gone. At first, he thought he was mistaken. Maybe he'd left it near the back of the truck. He stepped down, unsteady on his feet. Every movement cost him pain and balance. He limped slowly to the rear, bracing himself against the tailgate. Nothing. He looked left, right. Still nothing. A frown creased his forehead, not from the heat, but from fear. Without that chair, he couldn't get inside, couldn't drive home, couldn't move. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. He gripped the edge of the truck to steady himself. His chest began to tighten. And then a voice behind him. "Sir, are you okay?" It was a young woman, a Walmart employee pushing carts back into the building. She had seen him standing there for too long, looking around helplessly. Arthur turned to her, lips pressed into a thin line. His voice rasped out, "Someone took my wheelchair." The girl's eyes widened. She glanced around, then quickly pulled out her phone to call store security. Just then, a middle-aged woman who had parked nearby, her name was Maria, stepped forward. She'd seen the whole thing. She pointed to the black sedan and calmly explained how 3 young men had pushed the wheelchair across the lot and hid it. She even had a video. Maria showed the footage to the Walmart employee, who immediately dialed 911. 3 teens just hit a disabled man's wheelchair in the Walmart parking lot. He's a veteran. He can't move without it. He's panicking. Meanwhile, Arthur had sat down on the curb near his truck's rear wheel. He didn't speak. He just closed his eyes and placed both hands on his knees. It was as if he'd shut down from the world around him, as if he'd gone back to some silent battlefield, where the worst things always came without warning. Exactly 5 minutes later, a patrol car arrived. Its flashing red lights reflected off the hot metal around it. 2 officers stepped out, asked for statements, watched Maria's video, then walked straight to the black sedan. The teens barely had time to react before the officer raised his voice. "Which one of you touched the wheelchair?" One of them stammered, tried to play it off, but the video said it all. They had nothing to argue. 2 of them were quickly handcuffed on the spot. A man across the lot pulled out his phone and began filming. His video would later go viral with the caption, "Never underestimate the quiet dignity of an old soldier." Another officer retrieved the wheelchair from behind the Ford truck and wheeled it back to Arthur. He knelt down and spoke softly. "Sir, is this yours?" Arthur nodded, eyes glassy but dry. "I just wanted to buy my heart meds," he muttered with a tired smile. The Walmart staff offered him cold water and a place to rest. Another man, a former Marine, walked over to shake Arthur's hand. More and more shoppers began paying attention. Heads nodded. A few clapped softly. No one said much, but everyone understood. The respect wasn't for the drama, but for the man who stood tall even when he couldn't stand at all. The parking lot wasn't too crowded at midday, but it was noisy enough for bad behavior to go unnoticed, unless someone was paying attention. Luckily, someone was. Maria Thompson, 58, a retired librarian, had parked just 2 rows away. She was at Walmart to pick up some cleaning supplies for her bedridden mother. As she waited in her car for the interior to cool down, she noticed a thin, silver-haired old man struggling to retrieve a folded wheelchair from the back of his pickup. She watched him quietly, like older folks often watch each other, with a sense of unspoken compassion. But just a few seconds later, she saw something that made her stomach turn. 3 young men stepped out of a black sedan parked nearby. One of them pointed at the old man and said something that made the others laugh. Then the tall one casually strolled over and rolled the wheelchair away, out of sight. Maria didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and hit record. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anger. Her father had been a Marine who died from cancer caused by Agent Orange. To her, that wheelchair wasn't just a mobility device. It was a symbol of sacrifice, of dignity earned. As the teens returned to their car, grinning like they'd pulled off a harmless prank, Maria kept her camera steady. She didn't shout. She didn't confront them. She did the one thing that mattered. She called 911. Her voice was calm but firm. "I'm at the Walmart on East Glendale. 3 young men just hit an elderly disabled man's wheelchair in the parking lot. He looks panicked. He can't move without it. I have video evidence. He's a veteran. This isn't a prank. It's harassment." The dispatcher asked for a few key details. Maria gave him the license plate, descriptions of the teens, and hung up. She stepped out of her car and walked toward the old man, Arthur, who was now slumped beside his truck, dazed and struggling to stay composed. "Don't worry," she said gently. "I called the police. I saw what happened. They won't get away with it." Arthur looked up at her, with eyes full of weariness and disbelief. He nodded slowly, his face softening. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was surprise that someone actually cared. For minutes later, a Phoenix police SUV rolled into the lot. The lights flashed silently. No sirens. 2 officers stepped out. One younger, in his early 30s, and the other older, maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and a firm jaw. They walked straight to Maria, who showed them the video. The footage left no room for interpretation. The boys were clearly seen pushing the wheelchair behind a large Ford truck and walking away like it was no big deal. The younger officer clenched his jaw. The older one whispered something to him. Then both walked briskly toward a black sedan where the teens still sat, music playing quietly from inside. "All 3 of you out of the vehicle. Now!" The tall one, the ringleader, muttered, "What's the problem, officer?" The officer didn't flinch. "Do you understand that hiding a disabled man's wheelchair is a criminal offense? That's harassment, and it could be considered destruction of property." The boy's smug looks faded. One of them tried to play it off. "We were just messing around, sir." "Messing around? With the only thing that helps a disabled veteran move?" The officer snapped. "Do you know who that man is?" There were no more words after that. The handcuffs came out. 2 of them were cuffed right there on the spot. The third was told to place his hands on the hood of the car for a search. Shoppers nearby began to gather, drawn by the flashing lights. A few started clapping, not in mockery, but in quiet, grateful support. Arthur, now seated in his wheelchair after it had been recovered, sat watching the scene silently. He didn't speak, but his eyes, bloodshot, filled with something between sadness and relief, said more than words ever could. The older officer walked back over to Arthur and gave him a firm, respectful nod. "Thank you for your service, Mr. Jennings. Today, it's our turn to serve you." Maria handed Arthur a cold bottle of water. He took it with shaky hands and sipped slowly. She knelt beside him. "My dad was a veteran too," she said softly. "You're not alone." As the three teenagers were loaded into the patrol car, another bystander who had recorded the arrest uploaded the video to social media with the caption, "They laughed at an old soldier, then left in handcuffs. Respect is never out of style." Maria's original footage was posted shortly after. It quickly went viral, with thousands of comments pouring in. A cruel joke from careless kids, and a lesson for an entire generation. Once the three teenagers had been taken away, the atmosphere in the parking lot gradually settled. But the quiet wasn't empty. It was heavy with meaning. Passers-by continued to stop by Arthur's side. Some placed a hand on his shoulder. Others simply nodded, gestures that said more than words ever could. Arthur sat quietly in his wheelchair, his eyes still following patrol cars that drove off. The sun had begun to ease, but in his heart, something far more powerful had lit up, proof that decency still lived in this country. Not long after, another patrol car arrived. From the driver's seat stepped a man in uniform, middle-aged, crisp in appearance, wearing a lieutenant's badge. His firm stride and focused eyes told you this man knew discipline and hardship. He walked directly toward Arthur, not rushing, but with quiet dignity. When he reached him, he extended a hand. The handshake between the two older men, one who had fought in Vietnam, the other a veteran of Iraq, needed no words. It was firm, steady, and full of understanding. "Lieutenant Daniel Cole," the officer said, "I'm the district commander here. I saw the report and wanted to speak with you personally." Arthur nodded, his voice low but steady. Didn't think something this small would get the attention of the whole police department. Daniel looked him straight in the eye. "This isn't small, sir. Not to me. Not to anyone who's worn the uniform. Humiliating a veteran, disabled or not, is never just a prank. It's a line we don't allow to be crossed." He crouched slightly, lowering himself to Arthur's eye level. "Those three won't walk away from this. They will be charged, not just for harassing a disabled man, but for crossing a line of respect that this country must never abandon." Arthur gave a faint smile. After all these years, he had seen so much. There were times he believed America had forgotten its old soldiers. But today, a stranger had stood up for him. A woman he'd never met had called the police. And now, this officer, a veteran himself, was here not just as law enforcement, but as a brother in arms. Soon after, the Phoenix Police Department issued an official public statement. It aired on local news and was widely shared online. The statement read in part, "No one has the right to take away another person's dignity or independence, especially those who have sacrificed for this country. Harassing a disabled veteran is not just unacceptable, it is criminal, and we will protect those who once protected us." Meanwhile, Maria's original footage, showing the teens hiding the wheelchair and being arrested, went viral. Within hours, it had racked up over 1 million views, and by the end of the day, that number had doubled. Her simple caption read, "You don't just defend your country with weapons, you defend it with decency." Thousands of comments poured in. Most were messages of gratitude directed at Arthur, and at Maria for not turning a blind eye. One Marine veteran from Texas wrote, "We don't need pity. We need respect. Thank you for not staying silent." A 74-year-old widow from Minnesota shared, "I cried watching this. I saw my husband in Mr. Arthur. He's been gone 10 years now, but I know he'd be smiling if he saw this." Arthur doesn't use social media. He still uses a flip phone and reads the newspaper every morning. But that afternoon, a Walmart employee printed out some of the top comments and brought them to him. He sat quietly in a small cafe near his home, reading each one with glistening eyes. When he got up to leave, he left a printed sheet on the table with a handwritten note at the bottom. "To all who stood for honor, thank you. Arthur Jennings, U.S. Army hashtag 331-47-0219. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to subscribe to Old Soldier, a channel where every day we honor real stories of courage, gratitude, and justice. Today, you met Arthur Jennings, A quiet hero who endured more than just a stolen wheelchair. His dignity, once threatened, was defended not by force, but by kindness and accountability. If you believe respect should never fade with age, leave a comment for Arthur, or for any veteran who still fights silent battles. Your words matter. Your presence matters. And together, we'll keep their stories alive.